Are we ready?
Yep.
All right. I will call the Wednesday, July 14th Board of Appeals meeting to order. Would everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think everyone has a copy of the agenda. If not, there are copies up there. I'm not entirely sure we need to introduce the board members, but we have our name plaques up here. We're the same board that was here the last time, so if anyone has any concerns or questions. Okay, so the next thing on the agenda is approving the minutes from May 12th. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at the minutes? And if so, I'd like a motion.
I have something under Vice Chair. It's on the first page. It says there was a motion, but it doesn't, I wasn't sure if it had to follow the same thing as the motion on the chair. It just says Russell Ingalls. It needs to, I think, say motion for Ernie Wood to be nominated as Vice Chair.
All right, where are we here now? Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
You got it?
Yeah, pretty much just say the
Yeah,
motion to, yeah, I agree.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm following what you got.
That was my own.
Oh, you wanted to get out? Okay, any other questions or concerns? Thanks, Pat. All right, do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor? Okay. That brings us to the next item on the agenda. That's the appeal that we met on May 12th. As just a quick update, so everyone can hear what I think where we're at, and if we have any questions or concerns, we can. So basically, we continued the meeting because of the permit issue. We didn't have a valid permit. At that point in time, we had closed the public hearing, and we were in the process of deliberations. Since that time, we've had a workshop on the 7th, and that was basically, because it's a brand new board, we met with the town lawyer. It had nothing to do with any of the outstanding issues. It was all for our just general understanding of how the ordinance worked, so that we would be more comfortable when we came to this meeting to make a fair and accurate decision. So we met, and we found it very beneficial. Gave us a chance to ask some questions on how the ordinance works, and I believe that if it goes well, we're going to have that as a training session for new members. Hopefully, we'll get some more members to fill out our board, so that they can be privy to the same information that we received. So, having said that, that gets us tonight. Because it was a continuance for a couple months, I guess the first thing I want to do is ask, I believe the old letter is still the letter that we have. Is that true? The letter of appeal from you? Okay. So one of the things that I wasn't very comfortable with, because it was my first meeting, was getting a good sense of where we should be headed here. Reading through this, there were a few assessments or claims made in this letter that we won't be making a decision on because they're allowed by the ordinance. One of the things is that home occupancy is allowed in the area in question on Riddlin Road. So you brought up the question about whether it should be on Route 4 or Route 9, that's for standalone businesses that aren't residencies. So any Route 9 would be a business that isn't occupied, and that's where I think the additional requirements come in, because there's not going to be anyone there at night to know what, the protection and whatnot. So that we will not be deciding on tonight. The other question that came up during the workshop was 8.25, which is the governing rules for medical marijuana, for all marijuana facilities. And the lawyer has advised us that the only parts of 8.25 that are applicable are 1 and 2, basically point 1 and point 2. Once you get past that, it's only for facilities that are in the 9 and 4 area. Now, we are also going to be tonight. Let me just stop just for a second, because I did want to bring up 2 more things, and of course I skipped right over them. Tonight, after this hearing, we are going to look at a proposed amendment to the ordinance to clarify 825. The planning board's meeting tomorrow, and we will have a discussion about making a recommendation on what we think, based on talking to the lawyer and whatnot, would help clarify this ordinance. But that's going to happen after this hearing, but that is going to be a new item to the agenda tonight. The other thing that we're going to talk about tonight after this hearing is, I'd like to set a policy that anytime we have a home use, that we have a site visit. That way, it's no question about, we all go, we all see the same thing at the same time. So, but that will be to follow up after. So those are the 2 things that will be added to the agenda tonight after we finish our appeal hearing tonight. So getting back, because it's been such a long time, I guess the best way to approach this is for each, for the Stefanos to have the opportunity to come up and re-emphasize or talk, just bring us up to speed on anything that might have happened, or I think we've got a pretty good idea, but I just want to give you the chance just to say a few words if you so choose. What I would like to hear is a specific, if any of the items of 8.2, A through J, that you particularly are concerned with, that you don't think that the town's meeting or that the applicant is meeting, that would be the opportunity to come up and just identify those and give us some, I guess, direction or on what you think the concerns are. So, and following that, I will give the Roys the opportunity to come up and I guess make any comments that they want, and then we will close the hearing. So basically we're opening the hearing up just briefly, then we'll close the hearing again and go back into deliberations. Okay.
I just have a question.
Sure.
From a home-based business, can a home-based business have 2 locations, and can they be called a dispensary? Or is that 2 different animals? Just asking.
I'm not sure if I understand.
Is a dispensary and a medical marijuana caregiver the same business?
This is for comments from you don't need to answer questions if you don't want to from people who are testifying. That can become part of our deliberations. I think what she's raising is, if you could state it in the form of your objection to the application.
I guess the question is, it was brought up last meeting that we had that she was a dispensary. They deny being a dispensary, but yet all over their website, Stash Inc., it says multiple things that they're a dispensary, which I guess the question arises is a dispensary allowed on Ridland Road? That's the question.
And does a home occupied business have 2 locations, as the website still says? That was brought up at the last meeting. Yet tonight, it still says it.
And if you're a home occupancy business, why do you need 2 industrial kitchens in Sanford, and then you got your location up Main and your location on Ridland Road? And we'll stress it again, we have no problem with the business that they run, but if it doesn't belong on Ridland Road, we prefer it not be there, is the question. I mean, does it belong there? If it's a home occupancy business, like they're saying, a medical caregivers, then that's fine. But it's all over their website that they're a dispensary, which is our understanding that it's not in our zoning, allowed to be in our zoning.
Thank you. Any other questions or concerns?
No.
Just one.
Okay, no.
There's something that states that it can't be a dispensary.
I don't know, that's what we're gonna get.
Good evening, members of the Board of Appeals and Town Attorney, Code Enforcement, Planning. I'm Jill Polster. I represent the Roys. I was before you on May 12th. I will try to keep it brief and not be repetitive. I did provide an updated letter that hopefully you've had the opportunity to review. So I will not review the state of the law other than to remind you that home-based caregivers are allowed in all zones. It is under state law. It cannot be zoned out. Already, this town has told the Roys that they can only have 1 caregiver in their home, even though they are eligible to have 2, and they voluntarily complied with that. I will briefly address these questions posed by the appellant. My client's other business enterprises in other towns, at other locations, if they exist, have absolutely nothing to do with their right to have a home-based caregiver business. I'm not sure what they were getting at with that, but we're here tonight to talk about a home occupation permit issued to Jessica Roy for her home-based caregiver business, where she is limited to 500 square feet of cultivation if she chooses to cultivate, where she can operate by appointment only or operate via delivery. The term dispensary is common parlance in the cannabis industry. So when you are marketing to people so that they have an understanding of the products that you offer, particularly because Maine caregivers are allowed to serve patients with valid medical cards from 26 other states, to use that common parlance does not mean that she's a dispensary. She does not have a dispensary license from the state. Certainly, it would not be appropriate for her to apply for a state dispensary license and cite that at 68 Ridland Road. That would never happen. That would comply with the other parts of your ordinance and have to be in those specific locations. So the questions the appellant raises are just outside the scope of inquiry. I only explain by way of making sure that you understand that there is no dispensary being run at 68 Ridland Road. The Roys are in compliance with all of 8.25, the 8 criteria for a home-based business. You have not heard any testimony otherwise. If you do want to come out to 68 Ridland Road, you're welcome to. I know that the Roys would welcome you to come over. I know you're going to talk about that later. But they are in compliance. They are a compliant home-based caregiver business. The home occupancy permit was appropriately issued, and we just ask that you uphold it and dismiss the appeal.
Does the code have any comments or questions?
Not at this time.
Thank you. We'll-
Mr. Chair, just for the record, I want to, that we do have a permit, though, a different permit that was signed by you.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the permit that's now
Being
appealed, yeah.
Right. So
Yeah,
I
got
think
one, thank you.
we're at the point of closing the public hearing, and now we're going to go into a discussion. The question is, and I was speaking with the town attorney, and I'm going to let him give us the two options that we have so that we can formulate which direction we want to head.
Sure. So to briefly review, and I touched upon this in my last meeting, this is a de novo review, which means you're going to look at the issues fresh, as if the code officer didn't decide them. So it's you're standing in the shoes of the code officer. And then you're going to address the standards that are being challenged. That's my view of de novo reviews. Not everything. If they didn't challenge everything, there's no need to review those. But the parts of the ordinance that are being challenged, you would have a new independent determination on that. So I think your first job is to figure out what is being challenged. You've already narrowed the scope a bit in your introductory comments that it's not the board's job to determine what's a permitted use in a district or not. That's the town meeting's determination. So you can't decide that, but you can decide they are clearly challenging a few provisions here. So to go through and decide under 8.2 what's being challenged, and then if you find that they meet the standards or not.
Are the residents who are on Zoom allowed to ask questions?
Not at this time. We're in the discussion phase.
Thank you.
If we need information from any of the parties, we certainly can open it up so that we can get clarification, so that we don't rule on anything that we don't, that we have questions on. But at this point in time, we've closed the public hearing, and it's just the board's opportunity to discuss amongst themselves.
Well, so my question, and please do not mute me. My question is that I know from the last meeting some things that Mr. and Mrs. Roy had said contradicted each other and contradicted the business plan and why the permit was not granted at the first time. And that pertains to around Mr. Roy's business. And if you were to look back on the recordings, I could probably point you to those points where they contradicted each other.
We will discuss that amongst ourselves, and if we get to the point where we feel there's some contradiction and we feel like we need your assistance, we will certainly ask for it.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess, again, being the first time here, one of the things that I will say that when I was on the Board of Selectmen, I was really reluctant to set precedent, in that meaning that when you go and start making some decisions, it may seem like a great decision, but it's going to be the decision that you are going to, someone's going to refer back to say that in the future. That you, and where I'm headed with that is, if we open this up and look at all 10 or all 9 of these, we've set precedent, and the next person that comes in is going to ask us to do the exact same thing. So would this board be more comfortable just addressing the ones that are in question? Or is it the interest of this board to go down through all 9? I'm here to do what the majority of this board wants.
I feel that the appealee should point out the certain points that they feel are
If
not
we headed that in that
meeting,
direction?
and we will address those certain ones. We'll discuss the specific points, not to say waste our time, but spend time on things that aren't in question at all.
Okay, I want to just go back. I was looking at your letter. It says the appellant's case should be heard first, then the code enforcement officer, and then the board can decide to allow public comment. After receiving all the testimony and any evidence, the board will deliberate. So to me, we have to hear the public comment first.
We allowed public comment at the first public hearing.
Oh, so we're not.
So
I'm sorry, you did not. You put us on mute. You cut us off and said it was over.
That's the way I remember.
You heard that
also.
too?
Well, I don't remember that, but I don't think we heard from the public.
No, because you said that you were going to postpone the meeting until the appropriate paperwork was signed.
If you didn't hear from the public, why don't you just let anyone who wants to speak and let that
Okay,
happen.
so we will open the public hearing for a third time to allow public to have the opportunity to speak.
So my name is Candace Moran.
Okay.
I am on Zoom. And I just want to say it's not a third time to voice my concerns. It is the first time.
I understand that. I'm just saying we've opened the
Yep.
public hearing for the third time.
Yep. So my concern is that in the first meeting, the code enforcer stated that one of the concerns was that there was an already associated business with that residency. There were certain times that things went back and forth where Mrs. Roy had said that she admitted that her husband's construction business was out of their home, and he said he didn't work out of his home. She said he is running her husband's business construction company with employees coming and going, and that she had a small space in her house to run that business. So that was one of the concerns of the code enforcer, is that there was going to be two businesses run out of that house. Mr. Roy and Mrs. Roy were contradicting themselves back and forth throughout the first meeting. So I would suggest that you go back, listen to that information, and find out what's going on, right? Because she's saying yes, he's saying no, she's saying yes. They were also talking about that the reason why so many people were coming in is because Maine is a vacation destination, and this was by their lawyer. Well, for the past year and a half, we've been under COVID travel restriction. So how could people from out of state, from Massachusetts, New York, Vermont, be coming into the state to buy this product? Also, if they're by appointment only, and I've physically seen this with people walking down our road, parking past my house, talking on their cell phone, trying to find out where they are located. And this was last summer. So if the business was not open until March of 2021, when the caregiver permit was executed, why are people going to their house to receive the products? Also, the question is, they applied for a 2-car garage permit extension off from the house. That is currently not what it is being used for. There was a business plan that was submitted, and Mrs. Roy even said that she has had to deviate from the previous business plan that was submitted. So my question is, has a new business plan been submitted? Because if you are in business, and if you deviate from that business plan, you need to submit a new business plan so that that can be approved by the town. And if the Roys say that they are in an open book since the last meeting in May, I can tell you that they have not gone around to any of the residents within the area to tell them, this is what we are doing. This is how we are complying with all the laws. That has not happened. So they're not an open book. So if they tell you that they're being forthcoming, they are not.
Thank you.
Those are all the comments that I have to say.
Anyone else in the public, in the Zoom world, that wants to make a comment? We all set? Okay.
Well, I do have one other comment. So this is Candace Moore. I will say I have one other comment. So the residency in place is within a covenants. Should it not be the person who is in charge of the covenants who can decide upon what types of businesses are allowed within that space? I'm not sure.
You're talking,
That-
Candace, are you talking about a subdivision, I mean a,
HOA.
A
HOA.
subdivision covenants, correct.
Right.
So I believe that the subdivision covenances say that you can have a home business within the covenants if it is approved by the panel. I believe that subdivision, that the chairperson is still drowning, and I am not sure if he is aware of the business that is going on within that subdivision,
Candace?
and should he have the right to deny that?
I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. That was one of the other issues that we talked about with the town lawyer. Subdivision covenants is, the Board of Appeals has no jurisdiction over that. We only have jurisdiction over the land use ordinance. If there's a violation there, it has to go to court. We cannot decide on anything in that realm. It's not approved by the people of the town, and we only represent the legislative body of this town. So that one, you would have to follow up with a lawyer of some sort.
Great, thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's close the public hearing. And the Roys in the minutes said that the construction business is not operating on Riddland Road at this time. So we have evidence here to say that that is not happening. It's on the record here in our minutes that we've approved. I'm assuming that the permits to are all, the code officers signed it. We can ask the code officer, are the permits all in order for the garage and the living space that it's supposed to be? And I guess I'm not so sure. I'm going to, I think, defer to the town lawyer here on this one. On as far as a business plan, there's nothing in what we're looking at that even talks about a business plan. So is that something that we even have any jurisdiction on?
No, that's right. I mean, the town doesn't get involved in private business plans. I mean, that's a private business issue. To the extent, the way you would is if they had put something on an application saying we're going to do something, and then they actually did something else. I think that's what you would look at. But you wouldn't go into someone's individual business plan. The town has no business doing that, quite frankly. Other than
So
it's a use
I have a
issue.
question on
Candace, you're done. I'm sorry. We've closed the public hearing.
When
You will get muted, Candace. You will get muted. You cannot,
Maybe
we've
ask
closed the
question
public
last
hearing.
time. The woman
Mute
asked
Candace.
question last time.
That wouldn't be any different for the public, for someone standing up here and starting to talk while we're in public hearing. It's closed, okay? Okay, now, I think, did I address all of the 4 concerns that were stated by Candace? I just want to make sure that there isn't something that we have some jurisdiction on, and I don't think there's anything there other than she mentioned the construction business, which we have in the record that it is not operating at this time. So,
Can I ask something or no? Okay.
Can I say something or not right now?
how about let us get a little bit, try to get this thing going in a direction that we've got somewhere we're coming to some conclusion at this point in time. Okay, so I think we're at the point, we now have public comment. What is the board's preference on these 9 items? Do we want to go through each one individually, or do we want to give the Stefanos a chance? I probably should have been clearer, but again, this is new. I'm trying to work my way through this. The opportunity to address the ones that they think that there's a violation, and we'll look at those. It's the board's decision at this point.
I thought we were advised to go through each one, and that way, if this goes to court, something else, then we have already gone through everything and given our opinion about everything. Is that right?
Yeah, and just to be clear, just so there's no confusion, the attorney you guys talked to was my colleague, so I wasn't here. I was on vacation when you spoke to them, but I've spoken to Mary, so but I wasn't at the meeting, so I know exactly every single word you guys talked about. You can decide to go through each standard, but in my view, if there's no challenge to it, then they haven't preserved the right to appeal it to Superior Court anyway. So there would be no way to challenge it beyond you, right? So I think Mr. Cotton said, I think it's, you can focus in on what the Stefanos are appealing, right? What are they actually appealing, and then make a decision on that. That's my view. But it's I'm not a member of the board. So
Right.
you
And
guys can decide, as you said, to go through what you wanted is a de novo appeal. I don't have a vote here, but I can
Right.
just give you my
Well,
advice.
it says the appeal request for the following items. Number 2, Berwick Land Use Ordinance 8.2 standards.
Okay.
Does that mean they're questioning an appeal request on the 8.2 standards?
Well, we don't, I guess we could ask them, if you want, which standards they think that they're not meeting. That's what the lawyer's stating to us. Or we can just go right through all 9 of them. I mean, it may be
Yeah,
just
you could.
quicker just to do
Just
that
do it,
right
yeah.
now. That way there's no question about this in the future.
It's better not to debate about it for a long time.
Exactly.
and
That's
then
what I'm
just-
thinking.
yeah.
If we get to the point where we will go down through all 9. Now, I think what I want to do here is, I think we will just, remember we talked to the lawyer, and they said that these are in totality. So I don't want to get hung up on one if 2 or 3 down the road kind of answers what we're dealing with number 1 on. So, or A, let's say. And I'm not just saying A where we start. I'd like to kind of get any questions or concerns out there that we have on any of the 9. We'll talk about them, and then we can hopefully work through the 9 in order. But let's have a general discussion about any that you have a concern with, or you have a question with, or they can give us some answers on, so we're not going back and forth many times if we
Okay.
can help it.
I understand that you want to get on with these. What about some questions that I have that were brought up? Are we still talking about those?
Well, I think I'd like to, if they're, and generally, if they're associated with the 9 items, yes. But if they're not associated with the 9 items, I would like to get through.
That's right. You can only apply the standards that apply to it. So that it's an appeal of a home occupation permit. So the only standards that apply to home occupation permits are 8.2 standards.
Right.
Right. And then there are the 2 standards from the marijuana. So those are the standards that you have the jurisdiction to review and apply.
Right.
Not any other kind of, I've heard some things that could be code issues. You know, for example, if there are multiple businesses, theoretically, I'm just saying theoretically, the allegation of multiple businesses without permits, well, that's a code enforcement issue, and the code officer can investigate that. That's a separate issue from what you're being asked about tonight,
Okay,
which is
Outside of
simply,
scope.
does this application meet the standards? Yep.
thank you.
So, to get us back here on track, maybe the best thing to do is just, we're going to start with A, we'll open up A, and we're going to walk our way down through rather than try to do any discussion in the meantime. If, what we need to do is we need to have 3 members agree that these are valid, basically. And so 3 out of 4 of us have to say that they meet each standard.
That's right.
If we get to a 2-2 vote on any, we're going to move through that. And if we get to the end and there's only one 2-2 vote, I am going to open it back up and we're going to deliberate until we can get a 3 on either way. But I'm not going to do it immediately because we could have one that fails farther down, and then it's a moot point. So we will walk down through them. The minute we get to one that the board feels like we don't meet, we're done there. I mean, we don't have to go any farther. But if it's a 2-2, I will open it up again for more discussion so that we can hopefully reach some standing in front of the court that's not a tie. Okay?
Yep.
Having said that, the way that we should frame this is, I think, and the lawyer will tell me if I'm wrong, is basically, do we feel that the applicant met 8.2a for this permit? Yes means that they do meet it, no means that they don't. So that it's pretty clear, straightforward, that a yes means that we're in agreement that they meet that standard, a no means that they don't.
That's right. And the only thing I would add is, the board should have a reason, even if it's one reason, why it meets the standard or doesn't meet the standard. Because what we'll have at the end of this is a written finding of fact in conclusion of law, and the court likes to hear a reason why. So they don't want to hear just yes and no. They want to say yes because of the testimony. Even if you point to testimony, whatever you do, you just have to base it in something. It doesn't have to be overly
We may
complicated.
need clarification on that. I mean, there's some of these I'm not entirely sure what that would mean, but
Sometimes it's based on the testimony in the record.
Okay.
You know, it's something like that. But if you can point to the reason why you're
Okay.
making your decision, yeah.
So we are now at 8.2a. The use of the dwelling unit for the home occupation can clearly be incidental and subordinate to its use for residential purposes. Discussion.
I think it's where they live. It is their home. It's not a business that they show up to and do work. It's where they live. So it is primarily a house, and it was for I'm not sure how many years before this business came up. So
We also, when we were talking to the lawyer, said that we debated the incidental piece. And the lawyer basically said that it would be very obvious if it wasn't incidental. I think the argument that was given is you've got, to say construction probably is the wrong word in this dynamics, but if you had someone that's got a huge construction garage and he's got 10 or 15, or they have 10 or 15 different vehicles parked out there, that would be very obvious. Now clearly there's a lot of gray in between, but that was kind of the genesis of what the lawyer gave us for advice, I believe, when we were talking about that.
right, they're not visible loading docks, Mack trucks backed up to, and things like industrial things like that. You know.
Ernie?
Yes. How I look at things is that the appellant, in my view, has the burden of proof. And from my view, A, where it says the use of a dwelling unit for a home occupation shall clearly be incidental and subordinate to its use for residential purposes. I have not seen any evidence in terms of testimony or in writing that there is a conflict in terms of clear, there's no clear evidence to me that they're in violation of being clearly incidental and subordinate. If I had heard that a number of people who are living in that same neighborhood had written a letter and was very specific about what they have seen, not opinion, but what they have seen, or if more people had arrived in testimony here in our hearing from that neighborhood, then I certainly would be interested in pause to think about that. And so I look at it as that they have every right to appeal, but they also have the responsibility to give enough evidence to show that that is in violation. And going forward, my view would be that if assuming that we can say that it is clearly incidental and subordinate, the defendant, if you will, the people who are making this, are asking for the permit, they have a responsibility. They have a right to the permit. If they certainly want to apply for a permit, but they also have a responsibility going forward that they keep number A in their minds in terms of what they're doing with their business. So it's a matter, to me, it's about rights and responsibilities, and in both sides have a responsibility, and they also have a right. So I don't have any concerns under A because I haven't seen any evidence, substantial evidence.
Right. Are we comfortable? Pat, what?
I personally feel this is one of the areas where they push the envelope pretty hard. When you look at the other homes in the subdivision, but I agree that that it's. I'm voting for it. I think this is
Acceptable.
So we need
acceptable.
a motion. I think that we need a motion to. How do I want to?
You could do a motion in the positive.
Right.
And if you don't agree with that, you vote no. If you
Right.
agree with it, you vote right. So you could make a motion that the applicant meets,
Meets. That's what I
section
want.
8.2A for the reasons discussed here.
All right.
Yeah.
So applicant meets. That's a motion for 8.2A that the applicant meets the requirement.
I agree.
Moved?
Second.
Second. All right. I think we've discussed this. Are we all in favor? Oh, roll call.
Favor.
Favor? I'm in favor. Ernie?
Favor?
Yes.
Pat, in favor. That one carries 4-0. Okay, we're moving now to 8.2B. The home occupation shall be carried on by residents of the dwelling unit. I think the only issue that came up that I'll speak to is there was some talk of a nurse or something like that, and it's clear that it can only be residents. I think that's the testimony said that there were only residents there. We haven't found any reason to believe that there were anyone else working there. Like I said, other than there was some talk about the nurse, and clearly, and it's just like Ernie mentioned before, is even if you meet these requirements, it doesn't mean that you have to always meet these requirements. So it's not something that in the future that you can decide that you want to have people other than residents working there. That's what you're getting for a permit. That's the only thing you can have.
Maintain.
You have to maintain that.
The only difference would be you would not come back for an appeal. You would go to the code enforcement officer to say, I think something is happening here that shouldn't be.
It wouldn't be us, exactly. And then there
They
would,
would investigate it.
there would be enforcement through the ordinance. Right. Any other discussions on B?
I would just say, again, I have not seen any evidence. The only evidence I heard from, about that question was, I believe it was Mrs. Roy who said that, I asked the question, I think, is there anybody else who is employed and is not living in the residence? And she clearly said no. So I take that as the only evidence that I've heard. So I don't have a problem with B.
Pat?
Nothing.
Ashton?
I'm not an investigator and I don't live across the street and watch what happens every day. It's your responsibility to not have an employee, and I think that you have eyes on you, and it'll come to light later on. But sitting here on the board, I can't say that you do have an employee. So,
So can I
Not
ask
disagree.
how this is gonna work if you guys aren't asking like what our opinions are of each one of these standards?
Well,
So you guys are just going by what you know, not about like what we see, what we've told you, or
that's,
anything like that?
that's what we asked when you stepped up there. What did you think that they weren't meeting in A through I? We're not going to open up the discussion
Well,
to
then
the...
there's no point in this appeal. There's no point in it, because you're gonna give them in favor of what they want, what they're doing, when this is clearly, now you're not letting me give my opinion on each one of these standards.
I would just address, I hear you, there's some frustration there, but as a board member, I have to have clear evidence, okay?
My fault.
Not opinion. I have to have some evidence of concerns that you have in any of these A through I in order to say, you know what, I think that you're right, that there's some issues here that may lead to a denial. But I'm not hearing that evidence, and I didn't see any evidence in terms of letters or testimony from the previous time or tonight. I heard opinions, but not what I call evidence. If you get into a court of law, they're going to want evidence, not opinions.
Nor did we know that we had to submit a letter.
Now, we're still, again, I understand you're frustrated, and this is new for us as well, and I'll speak for myself, new for me as well, but we are at the point where the board's discussing. We can't, if we opened up the public, every single one of these, we'd be here all night. We gave everybody the opportunity to stand up and give us some facts, give us some opinions, and now it is the board's time to decide this.
I think we thought you gave your, your objections.
Understand what you wanted me to go through. The whole shenanigans.
8.2b, is there a motion that the applicant meets 8.2b?
So moved.
from his like,
Yes,
So we've had a motion and a second.
I thought we're just voting.
We are.
no, they meet.
They
I'm
meet-
all set?
Yes.
Pat, 4-0. Home occupancy may not alter the residential character of the structure or the neighborhood, nor change the character of the lot from its principal use as a residence. It's,
I think that was my only objection. The same objection I had to A is that I feel like they pushed the envelope a lot in how they changed the character of the lot. But it's not. It's not the glaring thing that the lawyer talked about.
Not a big steel building, something like that.
I think that we did hear testimony that it was not a straightforward process of how they got this building. But at the same time, it's not something that I'd maybe put up at my house, but I can't say that it's something that is that detrimental that no one is gonna, ever buy that house because of it. And I'm not even sure that,
Right.
I don't see how it, it could have been, and I understand it just could have been, but it could have been just a formal dining room or something like that that's huge, that they'd have the right to build in the first place. So I just don't see how it meets that. Yes.
Again, my concern is evidence. I would have liked to have heard, because I have, I have to look at this afresh, okay? And regardless of what the code enforcement officer or other people signed off on, we have the power to look at this issue from afresh. But when it comes to the evidence, that's the only way I can get information, is the evidence that enough people came to the previous hearing or this hearing, which I assume has been published under the law in the newspaper and whatever the law requires. I haven't heard any evidence that would contradict that they comply. And that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if our justification is evidence and we were given an opportunity to provide evidence, however, we did not recognize we needed the evidence. And just like the board being the first time that you guys have done this, us citizens have also been the first time we're doing this. So we thought that the evidence we provided or the information we provided was enough to bring it to the board. So I recognize I'm speaking out of turn. I understand that. But the recognition is that we're going down a path that clearly identifies that we haven't provided you enough evidence. And I can say as another member of the community that we can provide that. Because this eyesore of an item put in front of a house is not in keeping with the traditional look of houses in this area.
I realize I'm speaking out of term, and I second that statement there, and echo the same comments.
Do we all get to do that?
I'll third that.
Stop.
There's such a thing as due process, and I think that we keep running afoul of that
I
here.
know.
You closed public comment, and if this is what we're going to do, we want our opportunity to respond. We've played by the rules this
I know
whole
you
time.
did. I know you did. I
And
understand.
we've respected the process, and we submitted documents and testimony in advance.
I fully
And
understand
this
that.
has been publicized.
Yes, I do understand.
Could I have one kind of point of order?
Yes.
And maybe Phil can elaborate on this. But there are opportunities that the neighborhood can request a revisit to an appeal. So this is allowing the board they're gonna get it down on paper, the reasoning, and the neighborhood, you'll be able to address their point by point, and you'll have an opportunity to ask for a revisit of the appeal when you bring new evidence. And the board, the first point of order, in front of the board, they'll determine if the evidence is new evidence. Is that?
Not quite. I would disagree with that. No, this is the appeal. I don't think you can, it's being appealed. There's a 30-day window to make an appeal of a permit. So you can't bring it successively down the road, right? If there's an additional permit, I don't know, is this an annual permit? Okay, so yeah, there was an appeal window, essentially, and the appeal window was met at the original appeal, so that's why we're here.
Okay.
If there are code issues, and that's come up on the board, if there's arguments that they're not meeting the permit, then yes, they should go. People can go to the code officer, and that can be investigated, and as an enforcement item, but not the standard. And I would just sort of put the point of order. Yes, you've closed the public hearing. You've had the opportunity. The procedure works is that everyone has the opportunity to speak.
Right.
You have the authority if you want to ask questions, if you want to reopen the hearing,
Right.
But at this point, it's closed, and you should just deliberate among yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for the clarification. For the people that are remote, if you speak, James is going to have to mute you. If you were here in public, it would be much easier, but you can't just speak up. At least when people are here, they can raise their hand and we can acknowledge if we want, but you can't just speak out because it just goes to total chaos. And that's, the board needs its time to discuss these things. So you will be muted if you continue to speak up.
In addition, the public part of it has been closed.
Exactly.
Right, and go ahead and mute me, but there are reasons why people are not able to attend in person right now. Go ahead and mute me, but I just want you to know that we all...
Okay, so we're at part C. Did we have any further discussion on part C?
Yep.
I think it was, we pretty much
Touched upon it.
touched on it. We need a motion that the applicant meets 8.2C.
I agree with it. It's not a big steel building. It's made to match the vinyl. Everything is made
Just-
to fit
just-
in, so I concur, I agree with it.
Just the motion?
My motion.
Okay?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second for 8.2C. Ashton, you all set?
Yes.
I'm all set. Ernie?
I'm all set.
Pat?
Thank you.
No.
3-1. D, home occupation shall be carried on wholly within the principal or accessory structures. The outside storage or display of materials or products shall be screened from view from the abutting properties and street. Everything has to be done within the confines of the building. There was something, I believe, in the minutes that talked about outside plants at one time, but I don't believe there are any outside plants there at this time. So as far as I can see, the confines are inside.
Okay, ask him.
Any evidence?
So, any other questions, concerns with this discussion?
I'm going to look at something.
Okay, Pat.
Has anybody from the board ever driven down Ridgeland Road and seen the building?
Yep.
Is there a way to raise our hand in in this forum via remote?
The public hearing has been closed.
I'm all set.
All set?
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm not sure if it's under D or not, but I haven't heard anything about water drainage, and I believe I read something about water drainage or in this application. So I may be.
No, that was back at 8.25.7.
Well, isn't that in Article 7, the standards, the performance standards in Article 7 include water stuff?
Article 7, let me say
Performance standards,
Here,
Article
Ernie.
7.
So. Well,
Starts on page 56.
56.
So they have to meet all the standards in Article 7.
Right.
And I think one of the standards in there has to do with water. Sewage provisions, refuse disposal.
Or stormwater management.
Stormwater management, yeah. Water supply.
Water quality, yeah, 7.19.
Yeah.
So we will get to that in 7.
Okay.
Or in E.
Are we voting on D?
we haven't got, we are just still talking about D.
Oh, sorry, I thought you
That's
said
o-
E.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to E.
Oh, okay.
That's when we'll talk about that one. So we're still at D. Any more concerns or questions or discussion on D? All right. We'll need a motion that the applicant meets 8(2)D.
Motion.
It's been moved. Second?
Yep.
Matt, you all, do you make
Yes.
the second? So we got a motion and a second that the applicant meets 8(2)D. Ashton?
Concur.
I'm all set. Ernie?
Yes.
4-0. This is the one you were talking about now, Ernie. Part E. Performance standards of Article 7 of this ordinance shall apply. If additional parking spaces are provided, they shall be located in the rear and the side of the building, the structure, but not within the yard setbacks. So this is when the code officer opens up the manual to 7 and starts looking at the applicant, the requirements in 7. Any questions or concerns with anything in 7? We got, I'll just walk down through them. Air emissions, buffer areas, explosive materials, glare, landscaping, noise, odor.
Odor is always an issue with marijuana. If,
Yeah, I
you
have
know,
odor.
Perceptible
Providing you
beyond
have-
the lot line. Off-street parking, just let me walk. Refuse disposal, traffic, sewer provisions, setbacks and screening, signs, that's a separate item. Soils, erosion, sediment control, storage, stormwater management, toxic discharges, water quality, water supply, access to lots.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
could I ask a question of the code enforcement?
absolutely.
In your investigation about that, what we're just reading about, did you have any concerns about odor, drainage, all of the things that we're talking about? Are you satisfied that they are in compliance? Because to me, that's a code kind of issue. And it's also, again, one of those things where the person who is asking for the permit has a responsibility, but also the public has an opportunity, or let's put it this way, they have a right to look at that down the road, so that it may not be in compliance a year from now or 6 months from now. But to me, that's where they could take that case to you, not to us. So I'm just asking you, are you satisfied with this particular, because that's in your jurisdiction? I mean, it's ours to approve or not approve, but you're the person who is investigating and making an opinion about that for the permit.
Yeah, so are you all set? You want me to answer now? Are you okay?
You all
ready
set,
for me
Ernie?
to answer?
Yes.
Okay, so here in the town of Berwick, we give everybody the same opportunity for home occupation business licenses. If you came in for any type of business, we can't answer those questions right off the bat. We have to take what you're telling us as to be the truth. And then if something comes up where somebody was to make a complaint, we would investigate. We have a pretty strict odor policy here in Berwick. If we get any complaints, you have 5 days to resolve those complaints about odor control, or we can shut you down. So, and we've made that very clear. The Roys are very aware of that. Everybody is.
And so to my point, as far as you know, you have signed off on that they are in compliance.
At this time, we've had no complaints about odor
All right.
control.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What do you think, Pat? You have any questions?
Nope.
Ashton?
No questions.
All right. So we are at E. We need a motion that the applicant meets 8.2E.
I make a motion.
Ernie's made the motion. Pat, second.
Third.
And Ashton, you all set?
Yes.
I'm all set.
Yes.
Yes.
4-0. I believe this one on the permit is NA. There are no signs there.
I would like to bring that up.
Certainly. Let's talk about it.
One of the complaints, and it was brought up today too, about the person walking and looking for the place, which house is it? And also at the first meeting, someone mentioned that people were turning around in their driveway because they couldn't find the place. I'm recommending that maybe it would be a smart idea to have a small sign, and then maybe your neighbors will not be pestered by people that are coming in. So to me, I don't think we should ignore that. I think we should.
Well, I don't think we can tell them they have to have a
No,
sign.
no.
But I think you can say that the evidence we heard
Yes.
might justify one. That's okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Perfect. Yep. But
they don't have any sign.
they don't have any sign. Okay. So I don't think we need to go dwell on that. We are at 8.2.
Let's do it.
What's that?
Let's vote
Just
on
vote
it.
that it's
or
not-
say
not
it's not
applicable.
applicable.
Not applicable? All right.
Just for the record, just to have a,
All right.
It's not applicable.
because there's no sign today, right? That's the
Yes.
rationale? Okay.
G, sale and products shall be limited to those which are crafted, assembled, substantially altered on the premises, to catalog items ordered off premises by customers, to items which are accessory and incidental to the service which is provided on the premises. Questions, discussion?
I'd like to have this, I'd like to ask this question. When we say crafted, I don't see the word growing here or cultivating, but I see this word crafted. So I'm just wondering how that's interpreted under the law so that we can make better decisions in the future, or that's my question.
It's a good question. It's a sort of inartful term. It was sort of, I think, probably there before marijuana was added to your ordinance. But I think it's reasonable to read that as growing because, 8.25 specifically says caregivers are permitted as home occupation businesses. So reading those two
Within the
provisions-
home, though.
Within the home, that's right.
It has to be grown within the home,
In the
not
home.
outside.
That's right. So reading those two together suggests that, in this case, crafting, assembling or substantially altering suggests it's the making of the product, which in this case is growing.
I would suggest that maybe we change the verbiage for the future, especially in these emotional issues.
Clarify it, yeah.
I think we could talk about that later tonight. I think there's going to be hesitancy probably to change the general words because they apply to everything, but we could certainly make a clarification in 8.25. Questions, comments, concerns?
I have no concerns with G.
We all set? We need a motion. The applicant meets 8.2G.
Make a motion that they meet the tribute.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Ernie seconds. No further discussion. Ashton, you all set?
Yes.
I'm all set. Ernie?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion 4-0. All right. H, the home occupant shall not involve, occupation shall not involve the use of heavy commercial vehicles for delivery to and from the premises. I'm pretty sure in the testimony we heard that there was no substantial traffic. Any questions or concerns with H?
No.
Again, what I heard, can I speak?
Yep.
What I heard in the first hearing was that FedEx or UPS or whatever, they have a truck, good-sized truck sometimes. But that was the only thing I heard, again, as evidence, not having lived on Ridland Road. So I'm taking that as the only piece of evidence that I have. So I don't have a problem with it. But again, it's one of those situations where if other people in that neighborhood see otherwise, then it's your right to see the code enforcement officer. And it's the responsibility of the person who is asking for this permit to make sure that they continue to be in compliance.
I need a motion. The applicant meets 8-2H.
I make a motion.
Pat makes the motion.
I did reach out to code.
H. So we've got a motion and a second by Ashton. You in favor, Ashton?
In favor.
I'm in favor.
Yes.
Yes.
4-0. We have one last one. Public hearing's closed unless it's something that I can't. We've closed. Eight 2I, home occupation shall not create greater traffic than normal for the area that is located or greater than 20 trips per day. Testimony said that there was 10 trips, I believe, is what is in the minutes tonight. And that was by the applicant. I know you had some question about that, Pat. Are you all set with that one?
I still, it can be the number or greater than normal. And it does seem to be greater than normal, so go ahead and take the line.
I actually, while with the lawyer here, I'm a little bit confused with the wording myself, because I don't see how when we were talking to Mary, maybe it wasn't, maybe I was just thinking myself, when Jerry's Bicycle Shop is on Tyler Lane, which is a butter, is to me.
Yeah.
There's no way if you put a business in, the traffic's not going to increase. I mean, so I'm really confused by the wording on those words there, because if you allow anybody to do anything, there's going to be more traffic because it wasn't there before.
Yeah, this is another opportunity to maybe clarify in the future. I mean, I think it's reasonable to read it as that 20 is the sort of upper limit, if you will, because the other number is much more subjective. And the goal of these ordinances is not to create subjectivity, it's to create objectivity so that people can know what the standards they are to meet. Because you're right, I mean, some streets are busier than others. It really should be what is the business generating? Right. What is this generating? And it's hard to say as a standard that it's greater than what's already there, because what are you comparing that to? This guy's house versus that business. I think it's the way I would read this in a reasonable way is to say cannot generate more than 20 vehicle trips in a day. These are home businesses. That's the whole point of it. So you don't want them to be too high.
Exactly.
And otherwise, if you read it any other ways, it gets into a lot of subjectivity on what's too much. Is one car too much? Is 5 cars too much?
Right.
How many? You'd have to have a lot of evidence from a traffic engineer to say, well, how many trips are going down that every day?
Right.
So I think it's reasonable to read that as sort of the upper limit, the 20. Going forward, and you could clarify. And this is a good one to clarify. I think you could just simplify this: say, shall not create more than 20 vehicle trips a day, if that's the policy goal of the town. Or less, or some other number.
Right,
That's
yeah,
the number
you're
that's in there.
just-
That's
you're
the number
just-
that's in there today.
right,
But you
you're
could-
using
you
the
could come up
number
with a
that's
different
there.
number if you wanted to, as through a town meeting amendment.
Okay, we all set? All right. We need a motion, the applicant meets 8.2I. Motion? Second? Ernie?
Sure.
Ernie seconds. I think we've discussed this. We're all set? I'm all set.
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
4-0. The board has voted that the applicant meets the 8.2, all the aspects of 8.2.
So you should finally have one last motion at this point. It
Okay.
looks like that's the last thing that we were going through. So
Right.
the motion would be that
To
the
grant the
applicant
permit?
meets all of the standards, all the home occupation standards, and therefore the appeal is denied.
Okay,
If that's what you wanted, you could vote that against that if you want to, but that's where you have right now. You've got all standards met, so
Right.
that they meet the standards and therefore the appeal is denied would be the appropriate motion.
all right. James, do you have those words? Now, we're recording it, so we're all set. So the lawyer's given us the words. We got a motion.
Can I
You can certainly,
This gets us to the point that I've been trying to, as a teacher, a former teacher, I try to take every opportunity to educate them, but in our democracy, in our citizenship, there's responsibility and there's also rights. And the applicant has a right to open this a business under the law, and the public has a responsibility to judge whether they were in compliance. And if they're not in compliance, have the evidence. That's the key.
Right.
Have the evidence. And so that's the lesson that I've learned, having been the first time on this board. And I would encourage everybody to get involved in these kinds of things, because it makes our job a lot easier if we hear and or are presented with evidence. The police, that it mentions in here about the police signing off on certain things. We haven't explored that terribly, but the point of it is that again, that goes to the code enforcement officer. So everybody has rights and everybody has responsibilities, and we need to exercise both of those.
thank you.
And on the same token, I think it's really important to realize what this board is supposed to do.
Yes.
And also that, that avenues are still open through the code enforcement officer.
Yeah.
If these things that we have voted on, if the applicant is not meeting these, you still have recourse. So I think it's difficult. I've sat out there before. And yeah, so that's all I want to say.
Okay. So
So I make
First, did we
I
get
make
the
a motion. I make
You
a
made the
motion.
motion,
I'll
okay.
make a motion that the applicant meets the standards of 8.2. Is that what it is? 8.2.
and the appeal,
So that the appeal is denied.
second?
Second. Second.
Yep, okay. Further discussion? You all set? Well, I think we can show hands on this.
Yeah, show your hand.
Show of hands.
Just vote, yep.
Just a
It's
vote.
4-0. I'm gonna record it.
Okay. That concludes the appeal for tonight. We are going to talk about the proposed amendment to the ordinance, but I'll give people the opportunity to get up and leave if they want, and then we'll venture into the next item on the agenda here in a couple minutes.
I'd like to stand up and move around
That's
myself.
what I thought, maybe someone wanted just a chance to stretch their
Me
legs.
too. So we're going to be here
I
for
think
a
we're
while. We're going
Okay, I'll review them afterwards. Okay, yeah.
we're going to be here for a while longer.
I don't think so. I think he's got something he wants to present to the planning board. But I really would like us to kind of look at it and see, based on what we just gone through,
Yep.
what maybe is missing or what
Yeah, I
needs to be
understand.
put in.
Thank you for your time.
I'll help draft up a findings document
Okay,
for you to review. Yeah,
Thank
just
you.
summarizing so we have an official.
all right, great. I don't want that. You can keep that.
It's nice to see you guys in person. Hopefully I'll get a chance to see you again sometime.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to do a workshop
I don't
again
think, I think I'm all set.
in the future if that was helpful.
Yeah,
Step back
it
in.
is helpful.
Good.
And it was helpful.
share my screen.
Do we have to be plugged in and mic'd?
Yep.
Oh. Thought we were done with that.
Well, it's.
So this is a this is still public?
It's still public.
Okey doke.
Part of the public hearing.
Yep.
No, part of our
So
public
for the-
meeting.
There's a couple land use ordinance amendments that were suggested tonight from our town attorney. I think one of them that makes sense is 8.2I would be just crossing out, shall not.
What page is that on?
It's
I'll get
8.2.
you.
8.2.
Well, we're looking them up in our
No,
books.
Right here.
What?
Oh.
Yeah, but why can't
8.2.
we look
Go
them
to
up in our
8.2.
book?
Yeah.
Yeah, go to 8.2.
Page
I've got it.
81.
8.2 is the home occupation. It's on page 81.
Yeah, so a home occupation shall not create, and then from that point, so just striking
Go to 8.1.
greater traffic than normal for the area, and just make the standard, a home occupation shall not create greater than 20 trips per day. Like Phil suggested. I'll go over those next.
I'm not very good.
And what about G?
So what is the ruling on I? Is it can not create greater than what?
I'm amending it to make it clearer, because what our attorney said in I was that it's subjective, the greater traffic than normal, so getting rid of that and just making it an objective 20 trips per day.
So I have a question about that. So right now, the bridge on Ridland Road is closed. So we have people coming down and then they turn around and leave, but we also have people coming down to find said residence and then they turn around to go back to that house. So how do you determine the traffic if they go past the business and they have to turn around to come back to go to it?
I think for, well, speaking generally, right? So we can't talk about this application specifically, but
Correct, but I mean, so
you're
if,
talking about
say,
measuring.
so say it's on ABC Road, right? I'm just throwing out a name. And a car goes by and then you see them like slow down, then they turn around and then they come back and then they go back to the business. So that's creating twice the amount of traffic.
I think that's
Especially
it'd be two
if
trips.
there are children in the neighborhood.
Just let her finish for a second. Okay.
Yeah, I think it got to be considered two trips. It's basically coming and going.
Hopefully they'll put up the sign. I think they jumped on that over there. You know, I think it's important that they have a sign.
So that,
I don't think that, and Ernie, I think, wants to say something too. It's not going to ever be easy to start figuring out the number of trips. I
that's
mean,
something we can address at a later, like,
we can,
you know,
but you know what I'm saying? I just don't think it's ever an easy,
yeah.
it's still subjective. I mean, what you're kind of looking at is this person, I mean, what you're looking at is the number of customers, really, because the number of customers is going to determine the number of trips. They're not, Jerry's Bicycle Shop, if he's putting 3 bikes out a day, there's 3 customers coming to pick up those 3 bikes, if I use my analogy.
Right.
If he's only making 1 bike a day, there's only 1 customer coming. This is a little different because they are selling a product that could generate, it's not like you're coming to get something fixed and you're just coming to pick it up. I mean, and maybe that's what we have to look at in 225. You know, again, I think when you start, we're in a,
You almost have to say average, but then that makes it confusing. How do you determine it? You know,
And also,
And I understand that, but so in this case, it's also in a residential neighborhood where normally people are working at their business, so they're not home during the day to see all the traffic that is coming and going. I mean, because of COVID for the past 16 months, yes, a lot of people have been working from home. But once we all go back to the office, we are not gonna know what the traffic is like from 9 to 5. So how can you justify that in saying this many trips per day when people are not around?
Well, like I say, that's the problem. That's how do you realistically determine some of these numbers? When you put a number down there, how do you come up with a good understanding of what that means? The dilemma is you can take any specific example and find all kinds of reasons why you don't want, it doesn't meet something or you don't want it. But we allow people to have home occupancies. That's what the ordinance allows. And so if we're going to just say we don't want any home occupancy in the town and people are limited what they can do in their own property, that's where, you can't do that. I guess you can if that's what you really want to do, but I don't know.
I understand that, so why even have that as part of one of the criterias?
Part of I think one of the things that was mentioned earlier is that the totality of it. So when you combine the 20 trips per day and the products have to be made there, that limits the scale of an operation. So a lot of it's when people come to us and ask, hey, can we fit on our home occupation? You can kind of sift through that pretty easily by, hey, what do you do?
Right.
And you kind of lean on 3 or 4 of the relevant standards to make kind of like I think that could meet it, or no, that's not appropriate.
And I think the other one, and we're probably going to see it more, there's a lot of money to be made with marijuana, which isn't like a bike. It isn't like raising chickens. It's just not. And the rules allow them a pretty flexible, you said that they get so much area and so many plants, but it's tough.
The OMP governs that, we don't, about the area and the plants, but I will tell you that what Candy's saying makes sense a little bit, if that's the one who's talking.
I think it is.
Yeah, it makes sense a little bit in the way of it's 20 trips per day, but it's also 20 trips a day for whoever is making the product, delivering the product, selling the product too. And that's hard because I can tell you with kids, I leave my house, and as the code enforcement officer works from, I leave my house a lot. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know where they're going, and we're not going to follow them.
Right.
That would be stalking, So I think what she's saying is, when everybody's back at work, if you lived on Main Street, we'll just say, and you had someone next door doing this, you really don't know how many trips. You can't really. There's no way of counting appropriately.
Right.
There's no way of keeping track. There's no way of counting appropriately because Pat could leave her house 25 times a day just to go to appointments or come down to town hall and forget her pen or favorite pen and have to come back.
Right.
So it's tough.
And I think, Ernie, I know. Ernie wanted to say something, and I've interrupted him 3 times now.
Sorry,
4.
Ernie.
Somebody asked, how do you determine? To me, the determination is in that neighborhood. If regardless now of the number that, the 20 and all of that, because the other part of it says above normal. If there's evidence, okay, if you get 10, 15 neighbors who all have phones and take pictures, and they see this traffic, and they bring it to the code enforcement officer, and the code enforcement officer may say, you know what, I think I'd like to request PD to go down and take a look, just cruise by and take a look, and do it at irregular times, and see what they say. Because I've seen the police department as part of this on print. Okay, there's a sign off on a couple of things there. So to determine what's above normal and a nuisance and devaluating a neighborhood and all of those kinds of emotional issues. And keep in mind, marijuana is an emotional issue just from the beginning. That's the first fact, is it's an emotional issue. And so we're never going to get rid of the emotion that surrounds all of this. But what we can do is to say to people, it's up to you. It's your right to protest or to call attention to what you think is abnormal. But it's also your responsibility not to come with the evidence. And that's how things work in this country. They're not working too well, in my opinion, in some ways, but that's how it should be working.
Yeah, and home occupation permits here in Berwick are issued on the basis of, like, us not judging what is being considered a home occupation. So
Right.
whether or not you want to fix spikes, you want to grow marijuana, or you want to make
Right,
jelly
and you
beans,
should.
it's
Oh,
all
sure.
the same to us.
Exactly, it has to be that way.
Yeah.
We've since implemented, we now have a second page to our home occupation permit where we're asking for them to write a statement for A through I of how they think they meet each standard. So next time, that'll kind of give us a jumping point if this happens again.
Well,
And that would be beneficial to a board that had to
right,
uphold something.
right. Now they've made this commitment, and now someone can say they aren't meeting it.
Yeah, we have to give, everybody in town the benefit of the doubt and the same treatment.
Right from the get-go, though, and this, I was surprised. I really was surprised. Right from the get-go, we didn't have a lot of attendance.
Well, the Zoom part is making it, if we could get back to normal, I have a feeling we'd have more attendance. But that people are still not quite there yet. I'm not.
They have Zoom, I mean, obviously.
I understand. I'm just saying, I think we will, well, I keep hoping we're going to get closer back to conducting business in person.
We can't deny, if there's no evidence to the contrary, that there's a compliance. It's just that simple.
I'll go through 8.2G. I think we could add cultivated into that because tomatoes or whatever could be a home business. I don't think adding adding cultivated to that, cultivated, crafted, assembled, or substantially altered. I don't see an issue.
Or, whatever needs to be in there, grow, cultivate, I don't know what the lingo is.
I think cultivated, crafted, and assembled are all synonyms.
What to me, and I may be wrong, but it doesn't it say somewhere in the code that in home occupancy, the only thing they can grow is within the house.
Yes.
Okay, they can't. It's for home use. It's not for sale. It's for home use.
No,
Maybe,
No.
or it has to be grown in the home.
grown in the home. It had,
In the home.
inside
So-
the residence.
So the point that I'm making is that if, to me, I want cultivate, or this idea of crafted is ambiguous. I have no idea what that means. I know what it means, but.
Well, it means you can't bring stuff in wholesale and sell it retail at your house. You have to make something at home.
Right.
That's what.
So
that's
like
what-
knitting a sweater, or you could have a yarn shop. I mean, crafted is pretty self-explanatory in certain aspects, but the trouble is, as you start looking at different,
Yeah, if it contradicts
Uses-
the growing piece, that's.
I think what Ernie is trying to say is the simple version of it. It's better to be black and white when it comes to stuff like this. Put the correct terms, black and white, so there is no gray area going forward. I think that's what you're trying to say.
And that segues to this, where it's, instead of it being a marijuana caregiver home production, it's a marijuana caregiver home occupation. Adding in the delivery and selling right into the definition. Striking out processing, because processing's in that definition, but it's also in our performance standards so processing is also manufacturing, that's the butane extraction. That's the explosives. We have a somewhat conflicting, but the thing that takes precedence is Article 7, which doesn't allow marijuana manufacturing. Getting rid of that adult use doesn't need to be in there.
James, can you tell us what page this is on in our book?
That's, so the marijuana caregiver home production is in the definitions, the current definition.
Okay, because I really can't read what's up there. So home, it's under home occupation or marijuana?
So the,
Can you possibly print that, what you have there? No?
no, yeah, we don't have a printer in here, unfortunately.
Marijuana, of course.
Yeah, I guess this is helpful at least that it's helpful, but.
Well, I mean, it is helpful, but, and I had it, and I didn't make a copy.
Yeah, just start us from the beginning.
I just want to say from a resident of Berwick, I mean, this is all new to us. I mean, it was new to you guys. You were able to attend a workshop. We did not have privy on that. I mean, this whole stuff about providing evidence, providing photos, all this stuff, that was like news to us as far as what we had to provide. So maybe if there's also like further guidelines when it comes to appeals like this. I'm sorry, a plane's going over the house right now. We're not sitting outside. So if you would give me a moment.
No, we can hear you fine. I think that's a great suggestion, and
So if there were guidelines for the public on what they have to do if they file an appeal or if they want to attend an appeal, like here are the steps, this is what you need to provide, because as a resident, we don't know this. I mean, these are the first board meetings that I've ever been to in Berwick, so it's good for the residents to know this information so they can come prepared.
We can try to do that.
I can.
With this board's just getting started, other than Pat, we're all kind of new, and so we're certainly taking everything, suggestions under advisement to try to make the process better so it works for everybody. I mean, that's the whole goal. It's just like James and, I forgot your name.
Really?
I know.
Jennifer.
Oh. They try to work together. I mean, that's what we want to do too. We don't want to have people leave frustrated. Unfortunately, we can only work to the words that are here. That's we can't. What we feel has no bearing on what the words say and what we can agree to. What we have the way we have to do our business. And so certainly, if we can get applicants more information so they know what they need to do, that would be great.
Yeah, and I just want to put it on record too for everybody that when something like this comes up in our office, me and James tear it apart. So we tear it apart and we talk about it. I can't tell you how many times we've talked about generalized these home occupations with Medical Row. We talk about them all the time. They come up all the time. People apply for permits all the time. I'm not kidding, all the time.
Right.
We talk about it, we rip them apart, we talk about them, we figure out how we could do better with it. Don't we?
Oh yeah, and
all the time.
This process, both of us were looking forward to this process, and
Yes.
this is just, the beginning of. I think we can refine this, and we're always looking to refine our processes.
Every day, that's what we do.
And I think it's
So-
important, like you were saying, you don't know what to do. This is the first board meeting. Well, you know, there are lots of board meetings in town that go on, not just the Board of Appeals. And I think you'll find that a lot of them, the number of people that go and let their feelings be known is always matters, whether it's the planning board or the select board or whatever. You get your neighborhood, you have a neighborhood concern, you show it, because that's the only way they have to know it. And then you have to bring in as much information on your side, and you have to be like a lawyer, as much information on your side as the other side has.
Citizens have to,
you know,
they have a
And
responsibility.
It's hard.
I
It's hard.
understand that. So I understand that, but also, I mean, that means that if I want to go to a board meeting, I have to constantly be on the Town of Berwick's website to find out when there are board meetings. It is not public knowledge. There is nothing that goes out within the town that says, hey, we're having this. If it was like on Facebook, and people could like the link, and there's, notices published that are saying, hey, we're having this board meeting on this day for this.
Candace, other than
Yes.
the Board of Appeals, I think you're going to find most boards meet on a regular basis, and it's right on the website, what the planning board and the Board of Selectmen meet. We don't meet that frequently because we don't get, I've been on the board now, I think, 7 months, and this is the first appeal we've seen. So that's the reason there's no periodicity to us, because we just don't typically have anything to discuss. So for us just to show up and everyone to show up and us say we have no business, to discuss, it's a waste of everybody's time. So that's why the Board of Appeals is a little different. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Candace, I also invite you to our planning board meetings because you would learn a lot about our land use ordinance at them, and they are the first and third Thursday of every month at 6:30.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and it's also like, you guys are
tomorrow.
talking about, all of the different articles and stuff, and you get to go to a lawyer and talk to them and find out what they mean. I mean, the normal resident does not have that outlet to go to. So even some of you were saying, like when somebody was talking about, right, 82D, adding cultivation and crafting, well, what page is that on? It's like, you guys have a lawyer that you can go to understand what that actually means, because let's face it, some of the laws that are written, I mean, I sit here and I read them and I'm like scratching my head saying, what does that mean? Well, I interpret it as this, but then if I go back and read it again, well, it could mean this or it could mean this. So yes, it is difficult.
And that's
I understand. It's difficult for everybody to interpret the law.
Candace, I'm going to mention one other thing too, and I don't want to hurt your feelings or upset you, but when you go to these meetings, there is going to be a public comment time. And that's the only time you get to speak, because we've got a small group here, but if we had business to talk about and there were 8 or 10 people that all wanted to voice their opinions, we'd never get any work done. So that's why they open up the comment session in the beginning, and a lot of times they even may have a comment session at the end if it was a real controversial topic and they thought the public might want to voice an opinion at the end. Sometimes on the Board of Selectmen, I've allowed comments at the end, but it's just, I know it's frustrating for you, but the board can't do business if there's people going to be always wanting to make a comment as we're going along. Yes, Ernie.
I just would add that I'm a big believer that we all have responsibility to educate ourselves. Nobody is going to, you can't, nobody, people on the board, we called for a workshop to discuss among ourselves so that we could help each other understand what was before us in terms of the codes, not the issue. We didn't talk about the specific issue, but the process and the codes themselves. We took the time to educate ourselves. And I really believe that the public needs to understand that that's their responsibility as well, to educate themselves on the issues. And I realize that maybe the town can do a better job in publicizing when hearings are going to take place or what the issue is in those hearings. But I think they probably do, the law says they have to have a public notice anyway, and it could be in the newspapers, it could be on the website, and so forth. They're complying with the law about giving out information that the public needs, but the public also needs to do their own investigating about what's going on and educate themselves.
So let's get back to the proposed, because tomorrow you're gonna be sending something to the planning board tomorrow, is that right?
Yeah.
And I think it really would be beneficial if we had
I'm-
some input into
And I
that.
really need to, I can't stay forever here tonight, I'm sorry.
Same. I have a nursing baby
Wow,
at home.
somewhere-
Yep.
Anyway, so the big part is within the definition and within it 8.25.2, it specifically references that the marijuana home business has to meet 8.2, obviously, and 8.2.4, which speaks specifically to the odor control standards, and 8.25.7, which gets into, I don't have it in front of me directly, but I think that gets into the,
An operating business plan.
pretty much, yeah, right.
Description of the products, services to be provided, and dimensional floor, layout, neighborhood responsibilities to the plan that demonstrates how the business will fulfill its responsibilities within the neighborhood, elevations of buildings existing. So basically, it's a community outreach piece in a sense. It's like, okay, you're gonna go and put this business here. Have you tried to make sure that the community is informed of what's going on and doing the best they can to keep it not obvious, or, you know what I'm saying, not, yeah, okay.
But does that also include them reaching out to the fire department and the police department about it? I'm pretty passionate about that when it comes to this, because if the fire department never had to show up on scene for a building like this, they need to know the layout, but they also need to know what the use of the building is and how it flows, you know, like what do they do in the rooms?
And get
you
them
know?
involved
Chief
in the
plant
process
should
to
be
make sure that there's compliance.
100%, and then when they field phone calls,
You know, I think yeah, and I'll add in, shall meet 8.25.5.b
Yes.
as well. That's, I think I meant to. do that.
8.25.5B?
Yeah.
Yes,
Prior to
that's
granting
what I
approval,
think.
yes.
Shall receive
That
a
needs to be in there.
written statement from Borough Chief of Police. We could add Chief of Fire as well.
Chief of Fire really needs to be in the know, because they're the ones responding if something was to
Yeah.
go wrong too.
Not
So-
only that, some people
Okay.
might be more comfortable going to the fire department or the police department than your office.
Correct.
And there are other people who might say, no, I don't want to go to the fire department, I want to go to see Jennifer. So if you give people more avenues by which they can make us aware of what's really going on.
A typical building like this, just so it's on the record for you guys too, so you know, like a commercial building like this, any of the buildings on Route 4, Chief Plant comes out with me to a lot of them, and we do a walkthrough together. We pick apart everything, we make sure everything's in place, security systems going, but you know, we make sure that it's up and running appropriately, that if Chief's staff had to show up on scene, they know exactly where to go. They know where the main station is in the building, they know where everything is, including the Knox box. So
Okay, so we're going to make that a requirement of all home occupation people
yes,
for marijuana.
I think we should.
Okay, now this is a little puzzling for me. I knew I read it somewhere, so if you look at 8.25.5 security,
Yep.
and you look at A,
Yep.
all growing of medical marijuana within a commercial production facility shall occur inside and only within a completely enclosed structure. Then they said this does not apply to home growing of medical marijuana. So homegrown medical marijuana, this group that came in, the Roys, can grow outside.
Well, no, I think that's talking about
What? What?
if you
No.
are growing medical marijuana is, I mean, people are allowed so many plants, right?
So anybody in the state of Maine can grow so many plants.
Right.
And they
That's
can grow
what-
indoors and
Self-use.
outdoors.
Right.
That's what that's referring to.
That's what I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great exercise. I mean, skimming through the ordinance and making it more user-friendly or looking through stuff, it's a great exercise.
Yeah.
We're up against, these are the last, because tomorrow's the timeline, we're already behind on the timeline for ordinance amendments, but you'll understand the cycle of amendments where it's about 4 or 5 months before an election, we have to have our amendments done. So we'll be gearing up for next June pretty soon, because we're already kind of starting for November, and before you even know it, in November we're gearing up for June. That's just kind of how it goes.
Okay, I have one other question. What about, they had mentioned something about there are lots of people parking along the street, and when they, so there's nothing in home occupation about parking?
Well, references Article 7, which
Okay,
does have
all right,
parking.
all right. So that's something that has to be considered then too.
Yeah, they'll get fired.
So, okay.
So wait, because it says that they can't park in front of the building, they have to park out behind. Bring that up.
Yes.
Because it says that specifically. So they wouldn't be allowed to park on the street to use that business, that home business.
Well,
Because Standard 7 points that out, doesn't it?
I would be,
standard 7.
I think it says if it has on-street or off-street parking, then it has to be the side or the rear of the building. But I think, I'd be surprised if it limits on-street parking as a rule.
Well, I don't know, but that was the first time I heard tonight that they have parking all over the place, and I mean that's not appropriate either. So, and if that needs to be part of the home occupation thing, or part of the marijuana thing, I don't know which place you're putting things.
So that's parking.
I mean, generally, on-street parking is a thing that is a good thing, generally, having on-street.
Well, except if you're in a subdivision and there isn't
Right, but
an on-street.
you're still limited to 10 customers per day.
Yeah.
There's no need for them to park on the street.
That's what we're saying.
Right.
That was brought up tonight, yep.
Yeah.
Any home occupation, I think, needs to provide a parking space for their home occupation business.
And should the whole thing about the sign be optional?
Yeah.
That's what's causing all this issue with the neighbors. If they had a sign right outside their house.
I can't imagine
that
we
said,
make them.
I agree with that, but think about the people that come in and apply for a home occupation permit because they work from home through like
Right.
a place like Liberty Mutual or something like that, or they are a independent contractor for something like
Right.
that. They're not going to put a sign out that says,
Right, I do
independent
Liberty Mutual,
contractor,
right.
Here I am working from home.
Yeah.
So it's really tough. If we do one, we have to do all. We
Right.
can't just pinpoint certain ones. But I do
Mhm.
agree with you that, in some cases a sign would be beneficial. We just cannot make them. We would have to make all.
But
Does that make sense?
7.7's gonna kind of
Big
push
step.
that.
Yeah.
Because point 7's gonna say, the neighbors are gonna say, this is, we're talking, and they say, well, how are you gonna make sure that they aren't parking in front of, and that should help.
Agreed. Yep.
Okay.
So,
The other situation though that we also should bring up here, just so it's a better understood, is this is happening all over the town of Berwick. There are only so many people that come forward and register their
Sure.
home occupation through us.
absolutely,
Yeah.
I'm sure. That's,
Okay, so some people are just doing it.
Well, we can't be sure of that, but
Yeah.
I mean, we're sure, probably,
And you don't have enough staff to, I understand.
Well,
well,
no,
you can't
you
go
could-
into someone's home.
Like
either.
your
You just
business.
show up and say, hey, I wanna,
Right.
and they are protected through the OMP, private. You can't call and get any information other than might tell you how many card holders are in Berwick, but that doesn't tell you anything.
Also, marijuana
They're
home
protected.
production it was allowed.
Yep.
It was just allowed as an accessory use, period, and then we,
Right.
And what is that,
The
6?
state said,
well, we had it in our ordinance, home businesses were just allowed, period, and then
Yeah.
about a year and a half ago, we're like, well, that's kind of crazy. We should have some oversight onto it as we put the home occupation part into it.
But we watch all home occupations. We make sure any complaints that come in for them, we do, investigate. We have to investigate any complaint that comes in for anything, and we do that. So, if something comes up, we will investigate it and we'll take it from there.
Right.
And we'll reach out to our town attorney if we need clarification on it.
The dilemma with anything is, and I think I heard Ernie or Pat mention, I think it was actually Pat, you put the rules in and you hope everyone honestly is trying to abide by the rules. And I'm not accusing anyone tonight of anything. I'm just saying that if they choose not to, it's a struggle. And that's what these people, I think, tonight were frustrated with, is that it's just doesn't seem like they're making a good effort to try to be good neighbors. And you can't put that in the ordinance, really. I mean, I guess we do a little bit in that .7, but I mean, ultimately, you're either gonna allow people to do it and hope that everyone does their best to be honest about it and try, but you always got a bad apple no matter what you come up with. Someone's gonna try to push the limit. And I think you mentioned it, and I think you were dead on honest. They've tried to push the limit, and we can only do what we can do with the words that are here. And then you kind of not threatened, that was a bad word. You kind of tried to encourage them to understand that if you're pushing the limit, it's going to be pushed, you're going to get pushback. And you mentioned it too. That you're going to call a code officer, you're going to be constantly, I mean, that's, any time you hear disputes all the time, that's what we're going to hear too, is two people can't get along, they call the code officer and said, you need to fix this problem, whatever it is. The dog parks too much, you know, whatever it is.
There's some idea.
But, yeah, he does have some idea. We deal with this every day. Neighbors, you know, or other people, you know, just complaining about things that are going on, you know. I will say that 50% of the time it's founded and 50% of the time it's unfounded. But we do investigate it and then we make a determination on what we're gonna do. But again, James and I, we talk about it, we tear it apart, we, you know.
I'm very happy about that. I think you guys make a good team.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I do as well.
I appreciate that.
And I also want to let you know that from a personal point of view is I appreciate both of you got young families, and it's a lot of work and it's a lot of balancing in your own lives. And I appreciate your being here and
let's say goodbye.
And being
Yes.
being here for us, because we're relying on you to a certain extent. But
Yeah.
it's believe me, I can empathize when I was your age and had a younger family. And you get
Yeah.
And I think we will close it out. One other thing, real quick, and I'm telling you, I think the policy, I'm hoping this board agrees, that anytime we have a home occupancy, we should have a site visit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Say 5:30, whatever, an hour before, should automatically, James shouldn't even have to think about it, he should just put it down that there will be a site visit before the hearing. Because
Correct.
that way, we're all on the same page, we all hear the same.
Not an hour before.
Yeah, what?
Not an hour before.
Yeah,
Just an hour?
well, I mean, I guess it depends, I mean.
Yeah, we do planning board site visits like 5 o'clock, and then we have meetings at 5:30 or 6:30.
Wow.
But even if it was 5, because sometimes when it's later, we do 5:30, and you're there for a half an hour max, and then have travel time back.
Yeah, but that's for a site visit. You guys might, depending on why you would be in there, it may take you longer. So yeah.
I mean, like I was hearing some stuff tonight about, oh, there is some growing. You know, it's just like, so what? We have to tromp all over their property and measure you have to measure things, and you know, I mean, it takes a while.
Yep, and then I'm not sure what James and I need to talk about tomorrow, and I put it in my notes here. We need to figure out, like, for a home occupation medical marijuana, we need to figure out how we can conduct a site visit and be in the guidelines of the OMP at the same time.
You mean
So they are
of
protected.
privacy?
Yeah, they are protected by privacy a little bit, but we will get to the bottom of that for better clarification.
Right.
So when it comes time, we know the answer, and we're not, you know, shuffling.
I think we just have to, I mean, to me, it's more just the rules that we have to approve. I mean, we gotta see what the house looks like. We gotta see if there's, you know, just, I'm kind of confused actually, and I didn't know, the lawyer mentioned something about, because Ernie mentioned it, I'm gonna go investigate. And she said, you can't investigate. It's like, well, you're putting us in a pretty delicate spot here when you say we're sitting on this Board of Appeals and we have to make a decision, but we can't go investigate to get the information we think we need to make an accurate decision. It just seems like such a quagmire. And it gets back to, I guess, what Ernie said, they have to provide us data. They have to give us information for us to act on. Evidence, thank you. But it's still, it would be nice at times to have a little bit of idea what's going on.
And I think how you can really get past that and maybe help with that a little bit, not that it's going to really solve anything, but James and I, and with the help of you guys, I think we should meet and have like a little conference, and I think we should write out exactly what you guys would be looking for from the public, make it, you know, and put it right on our website so that when we have an appeal in the future, we can print it, send it with a notice, here's what you need to do if you want to be involved in this.
It helps them get educated.
Black and white.
Yep.
Black and white. It's
Put
very
it together.
straightforward. I'm
We'll look at it.
I'm a very black and white person, and I would look at that and be like, okay, if I want to be involved in this, this is what I need to do, because I don't think it's clear. It wasn't
I'm
clear
sure
to
it's
us.
not
Well, it
clear.
wasn't
So-
really clear to us. I mean, I won't
Yeah.
speak for us. I'll speak for me. I'm the one trying to run this thing, and I'm
Yeah.
like just working my way through it. I don't think it was as rough tonight as it was last time, although I don't know if that's true either. Hopefully, they're going to get better. You
No,
know.
I think it went well tonight. I really do. I think it went well.
I think you should get like not a fact sheet, like a fact instruction sheet when they come get the appeal form. They come in and ask you for it. I'm assuming, right? You give them a little.
Should be part of their
These are the
packet.
things that you
Yeah.
know what I mean. Did
Yes.
you just give them the appeal sheet they fill out, or is there a pack? Like what do they get?
For an administrative appeal, there isn't even a form. They just say, and I tried giving him a form, and he's like, "This is for we have a variance request form," but
But we can implement something and make it easier on you guys, us, and them, all the way around.
The one thing that we should put in the, when we have our agenda, there should be just a public comment session at the beginning, so that I can say, if you're interested in anything that's gonna happen here, you need to come up, identify yourself, and give me some idea why you have some relevance to this. That's what we did when we were in the selectmen, so that, you know, because you can't, I mean, people just want to get up and talk, and they aren't any part of the decision, but yet they think they are. And I'm not picking out anyone in particular, but
No, I know.
you identify yourself, say, I would like to talk on this issue, and this is why, okay? Now I might hear you, but I don't want, and we've got to get a better system for this TV, or I'm gonna go crazy.
Well, hopefully going forward, it wouldn't be hybrid like this. It would just be in,
I
and then
hope
you
so.
have, you know, and you can tell people.
I just don't know. I don't know what
Software.
my legal rights are with like
You
freedom
do?
of speech or freedom of access.
So we can ask the
to
town
mute-
attorney that.
Like I don't even know like muting
I'll ask
people
him.
or like you can put people in waiting rooms, put them in whatever.
But he never
Right.
said it. He never said anything.
He's
But at
very,
home.
he's very good at his job. You
But
know what
when
I
the
mean? Like,
muting
he's-
came up, he never said, you can't do that, or,
I think.
or go ahead.
Again, I'll get better at making it really clear, this are the ground rules, you know, and we're not, and I didn't think we had to, but I think it's just something that we're just gonna have to get in the practice of just saying, this is the ground rules for this, because if they kept interrupting in a meeting, you can have the police escort them out.
That is
You can
correct.
call and have the police officer completely escort them out of the meeting. They don't have the right to disrupt the meeting. They have an opportunity to speak, you close it down, and that's it.
There's
Well,
only
I
one
think
chair.
Yeah, and
One chair.
Most people haven't
I'm
been
not sure
to
of
many people haven't been to a situation. And I think they also need to realize, you know, and that needs to be in the packet, how one side goes first, says all they want to say, and
Yeah,
you're interrupted.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The other side goes, all they say.
I
And
mean,
then the
I think-
public,
I think I could create
all they
something
say.
pretty concise and information. That's
And then there's always a little give and take afterward because somebody's clarifying, you know, I
Yeah.
mean, but
But
then it's over.
But what would be helpful too is like, so meeting 1 was way back, okay? This is meeting 2, it's been a couple months. Maybe do like a quick 10-minute refresher on, this is what was heard, these are the main things that were said, and going forward, these are the main things that we're gonna discuss tonight. So if you have anything for these 10 bullet points, now's your chance.
Right, and that's what I mean.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Those 10 or those 2, that's it. That's what we're talking about, and that's all we're talking about.
I was going to mention that
But you have
when
to bring up
when
new
we had this
things.
continuation.
And have time for new stuff. But
Yeah.
I mean, like, stuff that doesn't apply.
Right.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, this was a continuation of May 12th, right? So the point that I'm making would be that you give people an opportunity to say, is there any more evidence? Evidence, not opinion, evidence.
But even that term, people don't
They'll
know what
skip
you
right
really
by it,
mean.
though.
Probably not,
But I mean, all we can do is try, right?
But you know, I was always wondered, like, because
everybody's got an
there's an
opinion.
association in there, I think. That place has some.
Yes, by
So-
ordinance,
Yes, there is a
their agreement to
covenant.
buy into that
Yes,
subdivision.
Yeah, so I would
Yes.
think a representative from the association would come and say, I am speaking for 25 people,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and this is what we are all believing is going on, blah, blah, or whatever evidence, you know, you didn't use your power.
Yeah.
Well,
you know what
well,
I'm
the-
saying?
Right, because you didn't know.
You didn't know. That's
If,
right.
if I could just say, as far as that covenants, like I said, Brownie is he's the say in it. So it would have had to have been the people that are within that covenants, which I am not, I'm in a different one, that they would have had to have gone to him and talked to him about it, and they did, and he basically said, yeah, I'm not getting involved.
Candace,
So, I mean, it's stuff like that. I mean, the one that I'm in, the person who is basically in charge, she's not well in health. So it's kind of like, well, you know, I don't know what to tell you.
so,
So each covenant has different
oh,
rules.
sure.
Yep.
And different regulations.
So,
I mean, it should also be that the property owner should have to go to the covenants board and get permission to have that home business.
that's probably true, but I think from talking to the lawyer, and I do believe this is 100% right, you can go into any covenants and say, I agree, and do anything you want, and you're gonna end up in court having to get the court to agree. I mean, there's no, you don't have, the board still doesn't have much legal standing there, I don't think, unless it's pretty well spelled out that there's fines and stuff associated with it to kind of govern yourselves, you know?
I'm sorry to leave.
I
have to
understand,
go.
but when you say, you know, like the people that live in the neighborhood and stuff, it's like, so we're all ruled by different covenants, so
Right.
it's not so
easy.
much that I know what their covenant says.
Right. I think that one, I guess it's getting to be more and more popular, but I would be very leery of getting into too many subdivisions that have too many covenants, because you have to govern yourselves, and you saw how difficult this was, and we had a board with a lawyer, and it still no one was happy. I can't imagine trying to govern yourselves and get someone that's flat out doesn't want to do it to do something, even though they signed up to it when they bought the house.
Correct.
The other attorney that we had in the workshop made that point, that in most cases, she said, that covenants don't mean a whole lot when it comes to the terms of the law. I mean, but they're nice for the association, but they don't hold a lot of water.
Unless you take it to court. If you go to court and you get a judge,
With a strong association.
right, but,
Yeah, it depends on the strength of the association, right?
oh, and how much money you're willing to, I mean, the trouble is, you can throw a lot of money at it, but you might not win, and most people aren't willing to put the money out there, because it's coming out of your pocket. I mean, you're gonna have to have an awful lot of gumption to say, I'm really willing to fight this. All right, I think we should have, there we go.
Adjourn.
Good night. We already-
Thank you again for your